Today, let's talk about whether dropshipping is dead or not. Okay, I think the first thing we need to do is to actually discuss what dropshipping is, because there is a specific definition. Not all businesses that think they're dropshipping are actually dropshipping. And what I will also do as well, so that you can understand where I'm coming from, is I will give you a little bit of background as to how I know, what I've learned over the years, and then you can come to your own conclusion as to whether I'm right or not. When I first started my internet business, it was a case of third time lucky. I had actually tried to establish the company twice before. And one of the things I used to do back in the day was every time we had finished creating a website, which would also help me with my own PR and also help the customer, was I would get them some editorial in a local newspaper. And back then, when websites were new and innovative, it wasn't that difficult. You know, when you have an engineering firm and you have a bit of editorial written that says such and such engineering has first website or new website, it's something interesting. Of course, you couldn't do that today. Everyone's got a website. It's not that exciting, it's not that interesting, but it's something I would do after completing every single website at the beginning, and it worked particularly well. One of the problems with that, of course, was the fact that it would get me in the paper, and once there's a little bit of notoriety, and actually other web design firms as well, once other web design firms knows of your existence and what you can do, and particular startups know what you can do, then you get headhunted from your own company. So on 2 occasions, I had a situation where I set the company up the first time and got headhunted. Set the company up a second time, got headhunted. Set the company up a third time and ignored everybody. So third time lucky. I would say at the time the majority of my customers were still brochure style sites. Okay, let me explain that. There are 2 types of, well, there are more than 2 types, but there are 2 main websites that a web design firm will actually create. There's the brochure style site, which is basically a glorified electronic brochure, which provides all of the information you would expect to find in a company's brochure. And then, of course, you've got your e-commerce site, where you can actually buy something online. Now, the very first innovators that got involved in the realms of the internet originally were mail order companies. I mean, you think about it. They've got the entire infrastructure there. They've got the staff ready to deliver the goods. They've got the products with product codes for ordering. So to put these online would be particularly easy, right? Wrong. It was not that easy. And the reason why it was not that easy is if you look at the majority of mail order firms, they are usually designed in such a way that they want to cut out the middleman. Maybe they're making limited edition products, those horrible plates of planes that you used to put above the fireplace, whatever. But what they're creating is of lower quantity that if there was a middleman, perhaps it would be too cost prohibitive. And to get rid of the middleman allows them to make a reasonable profit whilst coping with the demand. Well, these type of small businesses were not really suitable for selling online, because in order to sell online, you need to be able to accept credit cards. Well, if you're going to do it properly anyway. And to be able to accept credit cards, the banks originally, for you to be able to accept online credit cards, had certain constraints that were just too difficult for the smaller business. For example, in order to be able to accept credit cards, you would need to have a proper retail establishment. Well, mail order companies don't usually have that. On top of that, you needed to have a trading history in excess of 3 years. So the majority of the mail order businesses that came online earlier, because they were the right type of business to do so, were not actually able to accept payments. What they would do is we would create them glorified electronic brochures. People would order the catalogue. Once they get the catalogue, place the order, and they would still have to send the checks in. All of that changed, however, with compliments of PayPal. PayPal was so successful, in fact, that originally eBay decided to create their own system. And in order to be able to compete, PayPal actually teamed up with their biggest competitor, and eventually PayPal was bought out by eBay. It's a long story, but you get the idea. Let's have a look at Amazon. So Amazon started off with books. Well, let's be honest. Well, let's be realistic. They had to start off with something. You can't just wake up one day and tell everyone that you're going to sell everything on the internet as long as there is a demand. They would think you're absolutely crazy. So they needed to choose a niche market, and they did. And they were particularly focused on what they wanted to do. So focused, in fact, that they were not that bothered for a very long time about making money. So much, in fact, that the analysts would complain that they had become a laughingstock, and that business would very, very quickly come to its demise. Well, look what happened. Jeff Bezos became the richest man in the world, knocking Bill Gates off his pedestal. Where are these analysts now? And of course, once they started to conquer a specific niche market, because they're in retail, because they're in e-commerce, it wasn't before long that they were able to go into other niche markets. Now, e-commerce is basically a glorified mail order business. And you put your products online, customers go have a look. If they want to buy it, they can pay for the products via their credit card or their PayPal account, and you post it. So what on earth is dropshipping, and why are people saying it's dead? Well, the best way of describing dropshipping is when you don't actually physically have the stock yourself. The stock is somewhere else. And when a customer places an order with you, you arrange for the third party to drop it off. Now, at the moment, it's usually the manufacturer, or it can be a third party company, and you send them a copy of the invoice, you send them the delivery details, and they will ship it out for you with the invoice, and your customer is none the wiser. And this has allowed a lot of companies to make businesses particularly quickly. And with the advent of the likes of Alibaba and Aliexpress, there's been a lot of business through China. Now, what a lot of people have been saying is that this business has become saturated. Well, I don't actually believe that, and I'll tell you why. Today I actually saw a video with the title, "Is Amazon Dead?" And I almost fell off my chair. And it reminded me that I saw a video not that long ago, within the last couple of years at least, that was asking the question, is dropshipping dead? And I thought they were absolutely crazy, because dropshipping is just a mechanism. It doesn't affect the marketing, it doesn't affect the product, it doesn't affect the demand, and it doesn't affect the supply. Why would a business work if you were not using dropshipping than if you were? It doesn't make any sense. However, if you look at the timeline with reference to these new gurus that have been coming on board telling you the next best thing is dropshipping, then after the dropshipping they said the next best thing is creating an online course. Then the next new big thing is online marketing. So one of the ways that you can promote the new in thing is by discrediting the old one. And I even saw a video. Okay, let me explain to you why I see these videos all the time. I do searches on a regular basis to see new innovative ways of promoting and displaying a product. Looking at different techniques for 360-degree views, looking at new techniques and lighting techniques and whatever I can find, just to make things interesting and make sure that I am as cutting edge as possible. And unfortunately, by doing these searches, I automatically get the adverts from everybody else who's dealing with online marketing. I recently saw a commercial for a guy who's wanting to teach all about online marketing. He's been doing it for 6 months or something and doing very well. And he starts off his commercial by saying, "I went from making $500,000 on dropshipping to zero. It's dead. Let's move on." Now, I understand if you were running that business in the same way that some of these gurus profess is the best way of doing it, with these special plugins that will harvest all of the good products from Aliexpress that will take the description, take the pictures for you, and stick it on Amazon. But the only way that you should be able to succeed at that is by showing you're better than everybody else. That could be to do with the speed of delivery, not necessarily just price. It could be to do with customer service. It could be to do with various value adds, optional extras. Whatever it is, you have to be better. And that includes taking your own photos that are better than the crappy ones that have been provided by the supplier. It includes writing a description that is actually sexy and sales speak within your particular language, and not something that's just come through Google Translate from Chinese. It's got to sound good, and your business needs to be reputable. And if you get the right combination of all of these elements, you are bound to succeed. So of course, originally, when competition was not that high, and there were a few people just taking all of this crap off Aliexpress, selling it at a reasonable price, they could make money. Then when everyone jumped on the bandwagon and it doesn't work anymore, a certain number of people have dropped off the horse. Well, I'm personally not doing dropshipping anymore, but I do have quite a lot of experience in it. Many years ago, I started my web design firm, 2003, and for 3 years, it did particularly well. As I say, for the first few years, I was working predominantly with electronic brochure style sites, but slowly but surely, with thanks to the likes of PayPal and some others, e-commerce, although it was not the major part of my business, as a website per unit, the e-commerce websites made more money. And that's a fact. If you looked at my business plan and you were to look at who my target audience was in written format, I can even tell you exactly what it says to this day. It's ingrained in my brain. And it says our target audience are existing retailers who have done very well via traditional bricks and mortar means, and they come to us to create their offering for the wider internet audience. How good is that? So I knew exactly who my main customers were, but I also understood that in order to pay the bills and keep our staff up to date with their expertise, we needed the other websites, and we of course did the brochure sites. Everything was hunky-dory. Now, when the financial crisis kicked in, customers didn't want to spend more money on their website. We actually had a situation where we actually knew how much work we would have coming in on a monthly basis. Not necessarily just from new clients, but from the fact that when you have an old client and you include the hosting, you include a year's hosting with the website, what happens is, at the end of the 12 months, when it's time to renew their hosting, you can say, well, you've got two choices. Your website's looking a bit out of date. With technologies evolving far quicker in those days, they would go out of date quite quickly. So what would happen is you say, well, you've got two choices, sir. Your website's looking a little bit out of date. Maybe it's a good time for us to redesign the website, and we'll give you another year's free hosting. That on its own sounds pretty good. But there was something else in the mix that we don't really talk about, but I think it's a good time to share this with you. So we would have a situation that the day we hand the website over to the client, especially if it had a content management system in it, that website looked absolutely pristine. However, unfortunately, the customer's idea of what looks good does not necessarily always have the designer's eye. So what would happen is, slowly over time, although that website looked absolutely amazing when we handed it over to the client, over time, as they update the images, maybe an image is a little bit too big, maybe it's out of focus, maybe the colors aren't quite right, maybe there's typing errors and spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes in their content, the website, after a year, just didn't look as good. In actual fact, I was so petrified that if we put a link in our portfolio directly to a client's website and they mess it up enough and prospective customers think it was us, we could lose business. For that reason, we would always take a clone of the customer's website, and then we would create a subdomain name like thecustomersname.wickedwebdesigner.com, and we would put the clone there before it was touched, so that we could demonstrate what our websites look like as a clean portfolio without the customers being able to amend it somewhat. So that's what used to happen. We knew that we would have X amount of work to do based on the renewal of the hosting. Well, when the recession started, when the financial crisis started, nobody wanted to spend any more money on the redevelopment of their website. It stands to reason. Everyone was tightening their belts. However, in the words of Charles Darwin, when he said, "It's not the fittest or the most intelligent that survive, but those most adaptable to change," I realized we needed to somehow, if the customer was not prepared to buy what we were offering, we needed to make sure that we were offering something that they actually wanted. Now, we all know that as a business, we look for complementary products and services to sell for a residual income on the same target market. We've got their attention. We want to sell them and upsell as much as we can, right? So we needed to make sure that we had something to offer the customer. And one of the things that was becoming particularly obvious as search engines were changing was that the few customers that did turn around and say, "Well, to be honest, the website is not working. We don't think we want to invest any more money on it this month or this year," was what they meant was not that the website was not working, not that the website was broken, but the website was not making them any money. And this was more down to marketing of the site than anything else. I mean, you imagine if you were to have an amazing brochure printed and then stuck them under your bed, you wouldn't be at all surprised if you didn't get any business. And if you have an amazing website and no one can see it, then you can't really be surprised that the website is not bringing you any business either. So we knew that people wanted to actually physically see a return on investment. And so we concentrated a lot more on marketing. Now, in those days, for some reason, customers felt that Google should be free. Oh, they'd quite happily pay for a display ad in the Yellow Pages, but they, for some reason, didn't feel that they should be paying Google. Damn Google, why are they charging us? Why are they manipulating the system? When, if you actually think of Google as the new phone book, it makes sense that they've got to make money. They've got to make a profit. And you just won't believe how competitive it is. I mean, if you put an advert, a display advert, in the phone book back in the day, the price of the advertisement was based on circulation. If you lived in London, you would of course be paying a lot more than if you lived in Gloucester. That's the way it is, based on circulation. And you also know that 90% of the people within the area who you're paying for the circulation and distribution of the book are not going to be interested in your product. Now let's have a look at Google. When you have an advert on there and you're paying PPC, pay per click, you only actually pay if someone clicks on it. And people don't click on anything unless they're interested. So you automatically know there's going to be a higher conversion rate per click than conversion rate of circulation in any given area. And on top of that, because Google was not at the forefront yet, it was not where it is today, it was underpriced. I actually had some clients. I had one client who owned a marketing company, and in actual fact they used to be the company that were responsible for getting us editorial copy in various newspapers, that was actually saying to me one day, "What are we going to do? We have a situation where one client is buying all of these Google ads. He's spending over £12,000 a month. That's like $18,000. And he's making so much money, he's not interested in the editorial. What do we do?" I couldn't believe it. I just turned around to him and said, "Well, you're a marketing company. You need to start charging for pay-per-click. You need to start putting together the marketing strategies." It was particularly obvious to me, and that's how things have been changing. Why am I telling you this? Well, in 2007, 2008, we did particularly well diversifying into internet marketing and pay-per-click. And we had a situation where half the staff, after we retrained them into internet marketing, left because it's not the business they wanted to be in. During the financial crisis, India wasn't really hit yet, and they also had their own internal markets. So we lost about half of our staff. And out of the half that stayed, we had them running at 100% capacity. There was no more work they could do, and we were finding more customers. Well, of course, at this moment, we had situations where clients were still going bankrupt for the web work. I was still trying to find ways to cut costs. And how can I put this? There was no way in hell that I was prepared to start employing people on a Monday just to find out I have to sack them on a Friday. So I needed to be a bit more careful. And when we looked at our client base, we realized that there was a percentage of clients we had on the books that we just could not be comfortable with providing a good quality service. I mean, if you're a company and you're selling fridge freezers, why are you paying us to do internet marketing for something that, regardless of the fact that you're selling a product $50 cheaper than everyone else, that no one's going to buy it because they're not going to pay the $200 it costs to get something so heavy delivered? So we actually put together a criteria, a formula of what a product would need to meet in order to be suitable to sell on the internet. And we had a certain number of sales representatives, and what they were supposed to do was check this prospect's product against this formula, and if it matched, take them to the next stage, and if it doesn't match, apologize and say, I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do for you. Well, there's one thing I can tell you about sales reps. They might be particularly charming, they might be well dressed, but they're not necessarily the sharpest chisel in the box. And so to give them a task of cross-referencing a product with a formula is not necessarily the right way to go. Well, we realized that quite quickly, and so what we decided to do was give that formula to a member of staff and say, right, go have a look on eBay, and if there is a product category on eBay, then that obviously means that the product is popular enough for them to warrant the creating of that category. So we want you to take our formula and check it against every single category in eBay. If it doesn't meet our formula, if it doesn't match our formula, dump it. If it matches our formula, stick it on the list. And then we could just give a list to our sales guys of all of the types of company we want to do business with. And we did that. Then we went and we dumped all of the customers that were selling products that we could not help them with, and it was quite shocking. We had a situation where some customers were that distraught and disappointed that we no longer wanted to do business with them, that they were even offering to pay us double. It was crazy. But that's what we did, and slowly but surely we got the right type of customers, and of course the reputation for internet marketing was pretty good. Now, I had one particular client, I won't mention who they are, but I'm incredibly disappointed. I had one particular client where we had increased the sales of their website tenfold. And we would go and visit the client on a monthly basis, and we would look at the keywords, and we would keep tweaking the keywords and switching the money around. If we had a certain keyword that was bringing in more money, we would recommend they chuck more money at it. If we had certain keywords that was not bringing in much money, we would advise they get rid of it. We would do this on a monthly basis, and month after month after month, we could get them to spend more money because it's a numbers game and they could see the results. It was amazing. And I remember the day before the meeting, I was so excited to see them that I couldn't sleep. And I went to see them and I explained the situation. You do realize we've now managed to increase your sales from the get-go to now of an order of magnitude. And the recommendation was that they should spend considerably more. This was a milestone. And I was particularly confident that they would go for it. We even put together a wonderful PowerPoint presentation with some very good imagery in there because it was a special occasion. We put a lot more effort into it. And I went there, I gave them the presentation, and they looked me right in the eye and said, well, I'm ever so sorry, but management upstairs have told us that we have to cut the budget by half. And I said, well, Okay, we can do that, but of course the majority of your money is being spent with Google. You don't tell Google you're going to pay them less. You pay Google what they ask for, or you just don't get the service. And they turned around to me and said, we found a company in India who said they can do it. Well, that was odd. I explained to them they still have to pay Google, and that maybe they were talking about organic search results, which even back then would take up to 6 weeks for you to find out if it's worked, and if it hasn't, it will take you another 6 weeks to rectify it. It would be a disaster waiting to happen. Well, they wouldn't have it. And that particular client, although we had been so successful for them, they obviously explained that due to the losses they had made in several hundred stores, that even the increase we had made for them was not significant enough for them to overturn this decision, and that the entire marketing budget has to be cut by half, not ours. But it was still a kick in the teeth. If you are involved with marketing and you know something is working better than others, you don't do a cut across the board. You just be more clever with your budget. So they really did lose out. And I remember leaving the meeting, and I was on some kind of balcony, and I felt like I was staring into the abyss. Can you remember that music from Schindler's List? That really, really sad music? Well, if we cut to like black and white right now, and I just... Okay, that's enough of that. Or maybe Top Gun. Do you remember that music when his partner was killed in action? All right, let's try that one. Okay, so you get the idea. I was particularly pissed off, actually. And I felt dropped like an ex-boyfriend. It was a particularly bad feeling. I felt betrayed. And when looking at the bigger picture, it was very obvious to me that it would be much easier for a branding specialist or an internet marketing specialist to learn what they need to learn about retail in order to take this forward than it would do for a retailer to learn about the realms of the internet. Now, one of the projects I had done on the side to prove my formula, I'll give you some of the bits of the formula. How's that? I'll give you some of the variables. Here we go. So one of the things that we would ask about the product initially is it a brand name? And the reason why, if it's a brand name or not, is of benefit is because brand names are synonymous with quality. And when you're buying and selling on the internet, you can't feel or touch the product. But if you know the product is made by Samsung or LG, you're already comfortable or confident with the product, and you don't necessarily have to feel and touch it, especially if you've had one of their products already, or you can just walk into a shop and test the product quality for that specific model number before you buy. Number 2, is the product under 2.2 kilos in weight? Well, that's particularly important, because if the product is under 2.2 kilos in weight, then it automatically means you can put it through the standard postal service, and whatever money they are saving buying off the internet, they're not going to lose in postage. Number 3, is the product over $15 or £15 in those days? Yes, it was pounds in those days. I do everything in dollars now, but back then, before I left, everything was in pounds. Is it over £15? Because in order to stay competitive, whatever product you buy, you need to keep within about 30% as a profit margin. Because if you go any more than that, it's going to be quite easy for someone to very comfortably and very competently undercut you overnight. And you don't want that. So, based on a profit margin of 30% and based on the actual cost of fulfilling an order, you can't be making less than £5. So by making sure the minimum retail price is $15 and the minimum to average price of the profit margin is 30%, you know you've pretty much got that covered. And one of the products that really hit home for me, that it was able to meet the entire criteria, and this thing looked like kitchen roll, so it was quite stringent. The best one I found was designer perfume. And at the time I was realizing this, I remembered an article that I read about Boots Chemist. And what Boots Chemist had done is they had somehow got hold of Chanel as a grey import. So I think this stuff had come in from the US. Someone had offered them a large consignment. They said yes. They put it in all of their shops, and Chanel was so upset that they sent people around to all of the branches and they bought all of the stock for the price that Boots was selling it for. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. How much money they must have made as Boots overnight having all that stuff sold. So I realized there must be grey importers out there. It was not before long that I was able to find the supplier for most of the pharmacies in the UK. Now, I initially asked them, is there any way we can send you the orders and you send them out one by one for us? And they said, well, no, not really. We're a wholesaler. So initially, they would send the stuff to me and I would send it to the customer. Okay, let's go back a little bit further. I did not overnight create my own website. I decided I want to test this market, so I'm going to sell it just on eBay. Now, this is particularly important. If the owner of a web design firm who can get websites designed at cost decides that he wants to test the market first before he pays for the website, why on earth should a customer do it? Do you get me? So I tested it on eBay and we sold a lot particularly fast. So much, in fact, that it took up too much of my time. So what I did was I put an advert in a local newspaper near where this particular supplier was, and I found someone, a stay-at-home mum, who was quite happy to go there on a daily basis, pick up the stock, wrap and pack it for us, and it worked out really, really well. The way we did it was this: every time it came to about 4:30, we would process all of the invoices into a PDF, and we would have one PDF for each order, and attached to the invoice as page 2 was the Royal Mail postage note and prepayment and all of that. And all she had to do was print them off, and she collected the stock, and then she would take them to the post office, and everything was hunky-dory. Eventually, the number of orders grew enough for us to be able to go to this particular supplier and say, is there any way that our staff can just work here? And at 4:30, you will get the money automatically via PayPal. Oh, before, we used to have to send them the money. So we'd have to transfer the money and send it to them. And then, of course, I always had to have extra money lying around whilst I was waiting for the money for the current day's orders to go through. It became big enough that we were able to convince them to open their own PayPal account. It got big enough to convince them to actually have our staff working in their building. It convinced them to eventually employ their own staff for us and fulfill the orders. Everything was great. Everything was fantastic. So what happened? Two things happened. Number one, eBay did a deal with the owners of particularly large brands whereby, and this was to do with counterfeit, if the owner of a brand decided that an item for sale on eBay was likely to be counterfeit, they could flag it, and then it was the onus of the supplier to prove that it was not a copy. And of course, the only way we could prove it was not a copy was by providing the invoice. And if we provided the invoice, then it means the supplier could get into trouble or lose their stock for providing it to us. It was a bit of a mess, but it caused us severe problems. In actual fact, eventually it got so complicated that not only us, but a lot of the providers of grey imports for perfumery, they actually just stopped doing it. But that was the part of the problem that slowly but surely became bigger over time. The second part of the problem was this. We had a situation where quite a few people were contacting us saying they didn't receive the orders. And eventually, after constantly contacting the specific supplier, and they explaining initially that they had problems with stock not turning up. It became very apparent after a week that they were having financial problems thanks to this financial crisis, and that they couldn't afford to send out the orders. And of course we had sent them the money in advance. So we had to do certain things in order to facilitate them and even give them more money. And we expected everything to turn around until eventually they went into receivership. And because I was not ready to close my company yet, and my company was liable to the customers, not only had I already paid for the stock, I then had to refund all of the outstanding customers. So I now had a situation where one of the businesses I had on the side, which I was using to help pay some of the salaries for the staff who were working on projects where the clients had gone bust, that had now gone bust. I had one of our biggest clients with the violin music tell us that they needed to cut the budget. So I'd had enough. And even if I hadn't had enough, I don't think the business would have been able to stomach it much longer before it had officially gone into trading insolvently. And as a private legal entity, I would then, if trading insolvently or proven to be trading insolvently, become liable. So I had to call it a day. And I went back to being a freelancer. And one of the things that over the years that I've had wonderful opportunities in is doing this type of mechanism for my customers. Well, I've now got a situation where this year I want to do it again. And I'm going to do 3 videos. The first video is going to be all about dropshipping, but not quite. There's going to be a twist. The second video is going to be all about these training videos, training systems you can create and how they work. As you know, I teach English. I'm going to be using it. But the difference is when I do the training videos, I'm not going to do them where there's a monthly subscription. If you look at the likes of YouTube, the way YouTube works is that they put commercials in your videos. And once you get a certain number of subscribers and a certain number of views, they pay you. And to be honest, that money is enough. We don't need to make money on monthly subscriptions. So that's what I'm going to do with these videos. That's exactly what I'm going to do with the English videos. And I'm going to talk you through that process and show you the numbers as we go along. And then on top of that, I'm going to show you a video all about internet marketing. One of the videos I saw recently was someone said, look at this, I've just earned $2,000 for sticking this photograph with a product description underneath on Instagram. I understand how they can charge a monthly fee for about $2,000, maybe even $5,000, but you're sure as hell doing a lot more work than sticking a photograph with a description underneath it on Instagram. Just to put into perspective how ludicrous that is, I had a situation where a friend of mine owns a bar, and it's an Irish bar, and as an Irish bar they sell Irish beer, they sell Guinness, they sell Stella, they sell lots of European stuff. And in this country it's actually illegal to put alcohol commercials on TV, but of course it's not illegal yet to do it on the internet. So based on that situation, I went and I took, and don't forget their target audience are expats, I went and took all of the commercials for Guinness, Stella, Heineken, you name it. If they sell it and it's from Europe, we took the commercial, rebranded it on the top with their logo. They put one of these commercials on Instagram and all of the other social networking stuff. Every couple of days, people see the commercials, oh, I could murder a beer, and they go there. Did I charge them $2,000 for these 10 commercials? No. I did it in my spare time. I did it for a couple of $100. So if there are professionals like me doing the odd thing here and there to actually prove to my customers that they work in order for them to pay for a proper strategy, and I'm prepared to do that for a couple of bucks, how the hell is someone supposed to be able to sell for $2,000 a posting on an Instagram account? Well, we're going to go through all of these. And today's is going to be all about dropshipping. The next one is going to be all about creating a training course. Look how well Masterclass is done. We all know who they are. And then the next one will be all about internet marketing. So why didn't I do dropshipping then? Well, I don't want to do dropshipping right now for the very simple reason, if I was to try and do so, I would have to go back to England. And I quite like my life here at the moment because it's particularly cheap. And the money I'm saving, I'm reinvesting in my web business. So there's no way I'm going to do that. But Amazon have a trick up their sleeve. Not only did they reinvest into multiple niche markets, but they also sorted out the second part of the business model you need in order to make this ultimate electronic version of the mail order business. They sorted out logistics. Their logistics program is now so big that apparently FedEx and DHL have come to the conclusion that it's already cost their business over 3% combined of their market share. And if you try and work that out, I couldn't actually work it out properly, but even though I couldn't work it out, the fact that you know that 3% reflects a market share of e-commerce in general, then it's not a surprise that Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world. Now get this is the other bit that is so shocking. We both know that most of these sales that go through Amazon today are from third-party vendors. They're not selling everything direct. They make a small percentage, handling charges and everything else, for letting other people sell their products on their platform. So you think about this. If the guy who's been charging third-party vendors a small percent to use their platform is now the richest man on the planet, how much money combined are these third-party vendors actually making? And how difficult would it be to become one of the major players on a platform where it's actually being on the platform that gets you part of your market share? That's particularly interesting, right? So that's what we're doing. Amazon have a particular program which is called something like FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. You choose your products wisely, you pay for them, you send them to Amazon, you put the products on Amazon, which is a bit like when I used to put them on eBay to prove a market before I created the website. People buy them, people pay Amazon, Amazon fulfill the orders, Amazon pay you, and you buy more products. So you think about it. You start off with a couple of thousand, you make it 30%, you reinvest it in more stock. You do it over and over again. When you feel you're getting to a certain point of saturation, you start adding more products. And we do this over and over again. And if you look on YouTube and you look at the statistics, a few of them are making millions. Now, okay, we're talking about turnover. If someone's making 300,000 or 400,000, $500,000, they're still bringing in a couple of 100,000. It's still worth doing. And that's what I'm going to do next. And I'll take you through the entire process from start to finish. So in answer to the question, is dropshipping dead? Hell no. You just need to be more careful with the products you choose. You just need to be more competitive, and you've got to make sure you have enough value adds to make it worthwhile for the customer to buy from yourself. Well, I hope you find that of interest. Thank you for listening.